Legislation could be set to ban TikTok. It's in motion, gaining traction on Capitol Hill. We could see language to that effect included alongside foreign aid when a series of bills goes to the House floor for a vote that is expected this weekend. Joining us right now to talk about a possible TikTok ban or forced divestment and what could happen if Congress passes this bill, Anish Chopra. He served as the first U.S. chief technology officer during the Obama administration, now president of health data platform CareJourney. Good morning to you. I think we're all trying to understand if, in fact, this bill gets put into place, what does happen to TikTok. TikTok will tell you it's the death of TikTok. It's over. Do you believe that?
No. Obviously, it's a very popular application. There will be some negotiation with respect to exactly what form and format a new ownership group might take responsibility. There is a reasonable probability that this escalates, that there's a chance that Chinese government may encourage TikTok to essentially say, hold the line. But in my view, this is an important and appropriate action given the national security threats that are real and have been at the heart of why Congress is acting.
I want to get into all of that in just one second, but let me just ask you about the escalation piece, because I would argue potentially that the escalation piece just happened overnight. To bring you that news for the audience that may have not heard it just yet, one of the things we heard was that China told Apple no longer to keep WhatsApp, Signal, and a number of other messaging apps in the App Store that's available in China, and whether you consider that an escalation, if you will, of where this is all headed.
Well, there's two forms of escalation. One is a natural and obvious issue around what and how our cybersecurity posture fits within the U.S. and concerns about Chinese hacker groups is sort of category one. Category two, of course, is this access to U.S. applications in China that's already in place. You can't get certain social media applications like Facebook or Google in China. But the third aspect I wanted to make sure you were aware of is if they just simply refuse to sell. What and how would we take on the role of actual removal or degradation of the service in terms of all the provisions in the law? So the latter is where I thought there may be some escalation. The other two have already.
But answer that question. So let's say China says we're not selling TikTok. So then you're going to have to call up Apple and you're going to have to say take it out of the App Store?
Well, mechanically, what they would say is cease any updates. And so you just see, versions of the app kind of stale and not capable of upgrade. So that would kind of be the pragmatic view of it. But my hope, and again, this is like posturing, that this may be just if it's 51-49, that there could be a deal. This may push a little bit more towards getting a deal. But again, 80-20 rule, it's probably.
Right. But you don't believe that they would call up Apple and say, or call up Google and say, literally, genuinely remove this app from every phone in America?
No. That's not even what's envisioned. I mean, basically what's envisioned is a cease of support and maintenance. I don't want to be too dramatic about it, but it would basically be let the thing degrade in service over time.
And let me ask you this, because I think there's a debate, and I worry that we haven't. I worry that we don't know the full picture. How much of this do you think of as a prospective national security threat, as in it's not a threat in the moment? It's not that TikTok, at least that we haven't seen, maybe you know something different, is demonstrably using the platform to influence in a nefarious way the American public today, but it's the possibility that they could in the future? Or do you think that they are doing something today that is genuinely nefarious?
Well, remember, there's two challenges that we're trying to address in this national debate. One is, I think, already happening, which is that data on U.S. residents is in some form or fashion in the hands of or accessible to the Chinese Communist Party. That's the kind of data privacy issue, and there are many ways in which that can be used against us, including phishing attacks to get us to mistakenly agree to release. So there's I believe that may already be, and there's been accusations of this already publicly, that there's already been some of that exfiltration. The second aspect, of course, is what you're describing, which is algorithmic manipulation. And for sure, I don't know, we're not privy to I'm not in security briefings anymore, but those, to the extent that you want to get a signal, the fact that virtually anyone who's gotten that security briefing in Congress has been voting in favor of this bill gives you an indication that they're concerned. So algorithmic discrimination is a fear. We're going into an election, and you've been talking about market volatility. The two big threats are, will social media influence elections? and markets. And these, as my guru, Senator Mark Warner, highlights, are the twin towers of trust in our economy.
Maybe this is a more philosophical question, Anish, but I'll ask it anyway. I mean, we're talking about a foreign adversary in China, but just as easily, there could be an adversary that is domestic. So where is the line when it comes to Congress, when it comes to their ability to allow a business to operate or not operate because they think they are nefariously acting or have too much influence over the American public?
Yeah, this is the area where we need to be vigilant as a society, assuming the bill passes, on implementation. It's very explicit that it's defined in statute what a foreign-controlled adversary is, but there is some discretion on whether or not organizations are influenced by. And there is a provision that allows the president to assert, with some public comment and feedback and engagement with Congress, what is in that maybe slight gray area about how far can this go. So I would stay vigilant on making sure this is tightly administered, but let's keep our eyes open on those definitions, because that is the key where unintended consequences may arise. And so at the moment, I don't believe these rise to the risk of concern to withdraw support from this bill, but let's be vigilant that the definitions of what is a foreign-controlled adversary and who is influenced by needs attention.